She burned me. The scream cut through the charity ballroom so sharply that even the string quartet faltered mid-note. What would you do if the whole room believed a child was guilty before she ever spoke a word? Under crystal chandeliers worth more than most homes in Chicago, guests turned as one toward a trembling little girl in a white dress, the hem smudged with ash, her small fingers clutching a worn stuffed rabbit with one ear singed dark. Amara Reed stood frozen for one impossible second while Celeste, draped in red silk and diamonds, held her wrist and pointed with accusation burning hotter than the candlelight. "She burned me!" she cried again, and whispers spread through the room faster than wildfire. Some stepped back from Amara as if innocence could stain them. Others stared with the cold curiosity reserved for scandals among the rich. But Amara did not run toward the doors. She ran toward the one man in the room whose name people lowered their voices to say. Vincent Moretti stood beneath the grand staircase in a black tailored tuxedo, still as carved marble, his silver cuff links catching the light. Men twice as powerful as governors waited for his approval with less tension than what now tightened across his jaw. As the little girl collided into him, burying herself against his side, the room seemed to stop breathing. Security moved instantly, but Vincent lifted one hand and the motion alone halted them. "No one touches her." His voice was quiet, but silence followed it like law. Even Celeste faltered. Amara clung to his coat with shaking fingers. Her eyes, wide, dark, terrified, looked up at him not with fear, but with trust so complete it unsettled him. That trust struck somewhere old inside Vincent, somewhere buried under decades of discipline. Yet suspicion moved there too. Why had she run to him? Why did she hold that burned toy like evidence? And why, beneath Celeste's outrage, did something feel rehearsed? Candle flames flickered against polished gold walls. Waiters stood motionless with silver trays. Somewhere a champagne glass tipped and rolled unnoticed across marble. Vincent looked down at Amara. "Did you hurt her?" he asked, not harshly, but with the weight of judgment. The child swallowed. Her lips trembled. "I tried to save her." The words were so small some guests laughed under their breath. "Save her? From what?" Celeste's face hardened. "Vincent, don't let that girl manipulate you." But he didn't answer. He noticed then a faint reddened mark on Amara's palm, and beside it, the stuffed rabbit's scorched ear. Something in his chest tightened unexpectedly. Yet old instincts whispered caution. Power survived by doubting everyone. And still, why did the child look less like a liar than the adults surrounding her? Thunder muttered beyond the ballroom windows. Rain began streaking down the glass. Vincent slowly turned toward the crowd, his arm remaining behind Amara like a shield. In that moment, no one knew a single accusation had already begun unraveling something far older than one night's scandal. They thought a little black girl had brought chaos into a room of power. None of them understood power itself was about to be judged. What happens when a room full of powerful people decides a child is guilty before truth has a chance to breathe? The silence Vincent Moretti created with 5 words did not last long. It cracked under whispers, judgments, and the quiet cruelty of people certain they already understood what they had seen. Across the ballroom, crystal glasses shimmered under warm gold light, while old money donors leaned together like a jury forming before trial. She attacked Celeste. "Look at the girl's hands. Why was she even in here?" Their words floated low, polished and poisonous. Amara Reed felt each one land. She stood half-hidden behind Vincent's arm, still clutching the scorched rabbit to her chest as though it were armor. Her small shoulders trembled, but she did not cry. That unsettled Vincent more than tears would have. Most children would have broken by now, but Amara only stared ahead with a quiet fear sharpened by dignity. Celeste stepped forward, wounded pride now wearing the mask of innocence. "She came at me near the candle display," she said, voice unsteady enough to sound believable. "I tried to help her and she burned me." The crowd nodded too quickly. It was easier to believe chaos came from the poor than to imagine deceit in silk gloves. Vincent studied Celeste, then looked down at the child. "Tell me what happened." The room seemed offended he even asked. Amara's fingers tightened around the rabbit's ear. "The fire touched her scarf," she whispered. "I pulled it away." A few guests scoffed. One woman in pearls murmured, "Convenient story." Vincent heard it. He also heard the tremor in Amara's voice when she added, "I didn't mean to hurt anyone." Something old stirred in him then, something he did not welcome. He glanced at the faint mark on the child's hand again, and memory flashed without warning. A younger Vincent, a 10-year-old boy, smoke, heat. His own scar earned in a kitchen fire long before power and tailored suits. He flexed his wrist unconsciously. Celeste noticed. Her expression shifted almost imperceptibly. She knew that scar. She knew what accusation she had chosen. That realization chilled him more than the storm darkening the windows. But suspicion remained. He had survived too much by trusting instinct over sentiment. And instinct whispered there were lies here, though he did not yet know whose. He nodded toward security. "Pull the footage." Murmurs rippled. Even that choice divided the room. Some expected immediate punishment for the girl. Others sensed something changing in Vincent's silence. While his men moved, an older guest leaned down toward Amara with a smile sharpened by contempt. "Children who lie usually tell on themselves." Before Vincent could respond, Amara lifted her head and said so softly only those closest heard, "If I wanted to lie, I wouldn't have run to him." Vincent froze. Not because of what she said, but because she said him, not Mr. Moretti, not Sir. Him. As though she already knew he would protect her. As though she had never doubted it. The thought cracked something hidden beneath his composure. Then a security aide returned, pale. "Sir, there's a problem." Vincent turned slowly. "What problem?" The man hesitated. 17 seconds of footage are missing. A current passed through the room colder than the rain outside. Missing footage meant one thing in Vincent's world. Someone had prepared this. And for the first time all evening, he stopped wondering whether the child was lying, and began wondering who needed her blamed. What if the smallest person in the room was the only one who had seen the truth from the beginning? While storm rain traced silver lines down the ballroom windows and suspicion moved through the guests like smoke, Amara Reed stood silent beneath the weight of a world too eager to condemn her. But children who are overlooked often see what the powerful ignore. Hours earlier, before the accusation, before crystal glasses stopped trembling, Amara had entered the gala through the service corridor beside her Aunt Lorraine, who worked banquet kitchens on the north side and wore tired shoes polished to look new. "Stay where I can see you," Lorraine had whispered, disappearing through swinging doors with trays of hors d'oeuvres. Amara nodded, but wonder pulled her farther. She had never seen a room like this, marble floors glowing under chandeliers, walls lined in gold leaf, women laughing like they belonged in magazines, men speaking in low voices that made others step aside. She moved quietly, invisible the way children from hard neighborhoods often learn to be. And invisibility became witness. From behind a towering floral display, she noticed Celeste near a row of silver candelabras, adjusting one of the bases when no one watched. It seemed strange. Guests didn't arrange centerpieces. Then Celeste slipped something small and metallic into her clutch purse. Amara remembered because it made a clicking sound. She almost told someone. But who listens to an 8-year-old at a billionaire fundraiser? So she kept watching. Later she drifted near the grand staircase and saw Vincent Moretti from a distance for the first time that night, standing among politicians and businessmen with the kind of stillness people mistake for calm until they realize it is control. Amara had seen his face once before years ago on a memory she never forgot, though she did not understand why her chest tightened now. Then came the moment no one else truly saw. A candle flame leaned unnaturally as if nudged. Celeste's silk scarf brushed too close. Fire. Licked upward. Guests smiled on, unaware. Only Amara noticed. Without thinking, she ran. Small hands reached up, pulling the scarf away, grabbing polished silver warmed by flame. Heat bit her palm. Celeste recoiled. A glass tipped. Music halted. And in seconds rescue became accusation. Back in the present, Vincent listened as Amara finally whispered all this, each detail too precise for invention. Some guests looked uncertain now. Others resisted the shift. Celeste laughed too quickly. A child's imagination. But Vincent heard something else in Amara's story. Not self-defense. Memory. Observation. Truth. He stepped closer. You saw her move the candelabra? He asked. Amara nodded. And she put something in her purse. That landed harder. Vincent's eyes darkened almost imperceptibly. Hidden truths rarely arrive alone. They drag larger shadows with them. Before he could press further, one of his men returned carrying a recovered still image from security. Sir, he murmured. Vincent took the tablet. His face changed. For a fraction of a second, even his breathing stilled. In the frozen frame, barely visible behind Celeste near the candelabra, stood a reflection in mirrored glass. A second figure no guest had noticed. Someone had been there with her. Someone watching. Someone waiting. The missing 17 seconds were no accident. And Vincent understood, with a chill colder than the storm outside, that a frightened little girl may have interrupted far more than a candle fire. How does trust begin to crack when the powerful man you ran to starts wondering if you deceived him? The ballroom had grown quieter, but it was not peace. It was the kind of silence that gathers before judgment. Rain tapped the tall windows in restless patterns while Vincent Moretti stared at the recovered image, saying nothing. In his world, silence was rarely emptiness. It was calculation. Yet for all the questions now circling Celeste, one wound remained open. He still did not know whether Amara Reed had told him everything. And that doubt, even unspoken, reached the child before words ever could. He turned slowly toward her. Come with me. His voice was calm, almost gentle, which somehow frightened her more. He led her away from the ballroom into a private library paneled in dark walnut, lined floor to ceiling with old leather books and family portraits that watched like silent judges. Firelight flickered in a stone hearth. The door closed. For the first time that night, the noise of wealth and gossip disappeared. Only Vincent, the child, and truth remained. Amara stood by a mahogany desk too large for her to touch without reaching. Vincent studied her, not as a boss judging an intruder, but as a man struggling against instincts built from betrayal. Look at me, he said quietly. She did. Those enormous eyes held fear, but something steadier too. Did you touch that candelabra before the fire? A pause. Yes. The answer came too quickly. His jaw tightened. Did you know it could fall? Another pause, longer now. No, but old habits rose inside him. Tiny inconsistencies had cost men fortunes in his world. His voice cooled. Amara, are you lying to me? The words landed harder than accusation in the ballroom. Her face changed, not with guilt, but hurt so raw it startled him. For one terrible moment she seemed smaller, younger than 8. She lowered her eyes to the scorched rabbit. Then she asked in a whisper almost too soft to hear, If I was lying, why would I run to you? Vincent felt something fracture inside that question. Because she had not run from power. She had run toward protection. Yet suspicion still held him halfway. He stepped back, fighting the unfamiliar pull of compassion. Then Amara lifted her burned palm. I grabbed it because she was going to catch fire. Her voice shook. I thought grown-ups would be glad I helped. No performance. No strategy. Just a child trying to understand cruelty. Vincent looked away first. A hairline crack spread through armor built over decades. But before that crack could widen, his head of security entered, face pale. Sir. The missing footage was altered internally. Vincent's expression hardened. By whom? Someone with event credentials. He handed over a report. Vincent scanned it, and his face went still in a way far more dangerous than anger. The access badge used to erase the footage belonged not to staff, but to Celeste. The room seemed to tilt. Yet even then Vincent's old instincts struck one last time. He turned to Amara, voice rougher now. Why didn't you tell me sooner about the second person in the reflection? The child hesitated. Fear flickered. Then she said, Because I thought if I said too much, you wouldn't believe me at all. That broke something deeper. Gradual doubt became shame. Vincent saw it then, The true misjudgment was not suspecting the conspiracy. It was ever allowing himself to suspect the child. And just as he absorbed that, Amara glanced toward a silver lighter on his desk and whispered with sudden recognition, "You're the man who helped my mama when our landlord locked us out." Vincent froze mid-breath. The room went silent, and fate stepped into judgment. What if the child accused of causing chaos was the one who had actually saved the most dangerous man in the room? Vincent Moretti stood motionless beside the library windows while Chicago rain slid down the glass in silver streams. But inside him, old instincts were colliding with something far more dangerous than betrayal conscience. Amara Reed's quiet recognition still echoed in the room. "You're the man who helped my mama." The words had struck deeper than any threat ever had. Yet Vincent did what men like him had been trained to do when emotions threatened judgment. He buried them and turned toward truth. "Stay with her," he told his security chief, not taking his eyes off the storm. Then he disappeared into the private surveillance suite hidden behind the library corridor, where walls of monitors glowed blue in the dark and trusted men waited in tense silence. A corrupted frame from the ballroom cameras had been partially restored. Not a full recording, just fragments. But fragments were enough for men who knew how to read shadows. Vincent watched the sequence once, then again. Celeste near the candelabra, a flicker of movement in mirrored glass. A gloved hand withdrawing, a signal no guest would notice. His expression hardened. "Freeze there." The image stopped. In the reflection stood a man Vincent recognized from an old rival network, invited under a false donor identity. The gala had not merely hosted wealth tonight. It had hosted a setup. One of his captains shifted uneasily. "Sir, this wasn't about the child." Vincent's answer came low and deadly calm. "No. It was about me." The room went silent. Then came the realization colder than the rain. If Amara had not run toward Celeste when she did, the staged distraction might have unfolded exactly as intended. The child had not endangered the room. She had interrupted something hidden beneath it. She had saved him without knowing it. Vincent closed his eyes for one breath, and shame moved through him with unfamiliar weight. He had doubted the one innocent soul who had acted without self-interest. The crack in him widened, but fate had another turn waiting. His security chief placed a second report on the table. "We traced the altered footage credentials. It routes through Celeste's guest authorization. But there's more." Vincent looked up. "Say it." The event florist shipment included an unregistered delivery crate placed near the ballroom stage. Not flowers. Something planted. Something planned. Vincent understood now the burn accusation had been cover layered over cover, and an 8-year-old girl had torn through it by instinct. He returned to the library. Amara sat curled in a leather chair too large for her, rabbit in her lap, trying hard not to fall asleep. Children carried fear until exhaustion made honesty impossible to hide. She looked up when Vincent entered. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, unexpectedly, he knelt to her eye level, power lowering itself. "Amara," he said softly, "when you ran to me, were you afraid I'd turn you away?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "No, why not?" Her answer barely rose above a whisper. "Because heroes don't." The words struck harder than accusation ever had. Vincent looked away first. A man feared by judges and senators suddenly unable to hold a child's faith without trembling somewhere inside. Yet before that moment could settle, his phone buzzed. One encrypted message from an old contact. 3 words. She was bait too. Vincent's blood ran cold. Celeste had not been mastermind alone. She may have been used, layers beneath layers. And standing in that stormlit library, Vincent realized this was no longer about exposing betrayal. It was about protecting the little girl who had accidentally walked into a war of secrets. In a gripping story of power, betrayal, and redemption, a powerful American mafia boss is forced to confront a hidden conspiracy when a little black girl runs to him after a shocking accusation at a luxury Chicago gala. What begins as suspicion becomes an emotional reckoning filled with protection, moral justice, an unforgettable dark romance as secrets unravel beneath crystal chandeliers and stormlit windows. This cinematic dark romance explores the collision between ruthless authority and innocent courage, where a child's act of bravery exposes deception inside elite society and awakens humanity inside a feared empire builder. Through layered twists, hidden truths, and dramatic irony, this dark romance reveals how a misunderstood little girl may be the only soul capable of redeeming a man shaped by power. With emotional suspense, forbidden trust, and silent justice, this dark romance blends protection, redemption arcs, and elite underworld intrigue into a story of dignity and fate. Fans of dark romance will be drawn into a world of moral tension, vulnerable strength, and shocking revelations as the Mafia boss discovers the child accused of wrongdoing may have saved his life. Rich in cinematic storytelling, emotional catharsis, and unforgettable twists, this dark romance journey delivers loyalty, hidden danger, found family, and the kind of justice that leaves a room speechless. What if the child you thought needed saving was the one sent to save you from becoming the man you feared you already were? The storm outside had softened to a steady rain, but inside Vincent Moretti's estate, something far rarer than weather had begun shifting: conscience. Yet men who have ruled through control do not surrender to tenderness easily. They resist it, they test it, and Vincent, even shaken by everything Amara Reed had revealed, still needed certainty. Dawn threatened the horizon beyond the tall windows when he stood alone in his study, fingers brushing. The old silver lighter Amara had recognized. He had not touched that lighter in years. Not since the winter night he had helped a struggling mother avoid eviction in a Southside apartment building and forgotten the act by morning. But a child had remembered. A child had carried it like scripture. The thought unsettled him more than conspiracies. When he returned to the library, Amara was awake, small feet tucked beneath her in the leather chair, staring at the rain as if listening to something older than storms. Vincent sat across from her, not behind a desk, not above her, beside her. The shift mattered. "How did you know it was me?" he asked. Amara looked at the lighter in his hand. "My mama said a dangerous-looking man with kind eyes paid our rent when we had nowhere to go." Vincent almost smiled at dangerous-looking. "Almost. And you remembered me from that?" She nodded. "I prayed if I was ever scared again, I'd find that man." The room went silent. Vincent froze mid-breath. There are moments power cannot defend against. This was one. A child had made him a promise he never knew he made. And suddenly the empire he spent decades building seemed less significant than the faith in those eyes. Yet fate was not done unfolding. Amara looked at the lighter again, then toward the hallway. "The lady in red," she whispered. She looked scared too. Vincent's gaze sharpened. Not evil, scared. Children often see what adults miss. "Why do you say that?" he asked. Amara hesitated. Before the fire, she told the man in the reflection she didn't want anyone hurt. Vincent felt the room tighten. That changed everything. Celeste might not have been architect but pawn. Betrayal had another layer. He called for a discreet inquiry, but something stranger happened first. While waiting, Amara wandered to a framed photo on a shelf. Vincent as a boy beside his grandmother. "She loved you," Amara said. He stared. "How would you know?" Her answer came innocent as rain. "Because people who were loved keep old pictures close." He looked at the frame differently, as though seeing his own life through a child's moral clarity. The crack inside him widened into something almost painful. Gradual emotional fracture became awakening. Then his phone buzzed again. New intelligence. The rival guest had left the gala early, but not before requesting access to the children's service wing. Vincent went cold. This had never only been about him. Someone had noticed Amara. Someone knew she had seen too much. He rose at once, protective instinct replacing suspicion completely. But before leaving, he turned back to the child. "Amara," she looked up. "Why did you really run to me tonight?" Her answer came without hesitation. "Because powerful people scare me." She paused. "Except you." For the first time in years, Vincent Moretti had no reply. Only silence. only the unbearable weight of being trusted. And as dawn light touched the rain, he understood with terrifying clarity. This little girl had not wandered into his world by accident. She had become the line between the man he had been and the man he still might become.